Many of you recognize him as the guy in the top hat or the chief sticker officer. But he's also JFrog's very own head of developer relations. Please welcome Baruch Sadogursky.
Hey. Everybody ditched me for the coffee and the restrooms. Seriously, restrooms and me. Well, restrooms, I guess. Okay, so welcome again to swampUP 2018. So far, I think amazing keynotes, amazing stuff. And now we're going to talk about the download Liquid software. So as already mentioned, my name is Baruch. I'm developer advocate and head of developer relations with JFrog at JBaruch on Twitter. I'm pretty sure everybody here follow me on Twitter. If there is someone, that will be a good time because I'm hilarious on Twitter. Let's talk about the evolution of software and the reasons for it. Who is old enough to remember that? Late 1990s, we needed a new version of operation system in our, what it was, Motorola, Nokia phones. We went to the repair shop for them to do it. And then, oh, this I remember very well. Nokia software updater, anyone? Right? That was great. That was a great experience. So that's mid-2000s. We plugged it in, and we kind of got our software update there. This is pretty much recent. If you update your operating system on your phone, upgrading to new iOS or Android, this is what you do now. You're like, are you sure you are able to live without your phone for the next 45 minutes? And you're like, I'm not sure. Yeah. But the interesting part is that most of the software on your phone, like apps and stuff, they're this thing. Anyone knows which version of Twitter client their phone runs? I knew I'll see one hand. I knew it. That was like almost it was staged, but it wasn't. Yeah, one hand. No one knows. And you're lying, Yossi. Why does it happen? I mean, that's a massive investment in everything, getting from what we used to have to what we have now. Giving away the control of upgrades, of updates, of versions, that's a very big shift. And it happened because we, the customers, expect it to happen. And this great war between Android and iOS and this drive to get better of the competition, this is exactly what improves everything in our consumer lives, including how we update our software. That makes sense. I didn't say anything new. But there is another drive. And this is getting back to what John spoke about. Spectre. Spectre is fun. A couple of months ago, you probably all remember, we opened this year with great news about Meltdown and Spectre. That's a vulnerability, two types of vulnerabilities that hit almost every CPU architecture that we currently use, Intel, AMD, ARM, everything is compromised. Our life is a living hell. People can steal our passwords, and they don't need anything for it. And Meltdown was the big focus because it was like, oh, look, this JavaScript code can steal all my passwords. But I think that Spectre was much and is much more frightening. Because if you remember, Meltdown was patchable. A couple of weeks after, we got updates for our operating systems. We suffer 5 to 30% performance hit, but we were safe from Meltdown. Now, Spectre is different. So as I mentioned, most of the CPU architectures are vulnerable. It tricks error-free programs. Now, this is scary shit. I mean, there is no way you can write software and know how to protect this software against Spectre, because Spectre is a pattern of vulnerabilities and new ways to exploit it discovered after your software is already written. Harder to mitigate at Meltdown. And this is a nice way to say we cannot prevent it. The only way to fight Spectre is with software updates. Preventing specific known exploits. After someone found a new way to exploit your perfectly valid code, and it did what it did for a lot of different software out there, and someone else discovered that it was a Spectre attack, only then we can prevent it by using software updates. And this is a race. Whoever updates their software faster is more protected from this exploit. Now, for me, this is another very, very significant drive for software updates. It's not now, well, my phone is fancier than yours, it updates quickly and transparent. It's like, we discovered a new Spectre exploit. How many hours after the 0 day our software will be protected? Because before is not an option. This thing is hard. This thing is hard because software is not what it used to be. It's not just computers anymore, it's everything. Smart light bulbs is what we think when we think about Internet of Things, but things is not only those two things, it's everything. It's the normal computers that we use, it's the servers that we have in our data centers, in the cloud, it's the serverless that doesn't have servers. Well, there are servers and that need to be patched as well for protecting from vulnerabilities. Spaceships, that's a thing, it is connected. Internet of Things. Stuff is complicated. Now, the updates are complicated so much that even the best of us actually manage to fail spectacularly. I have a bunch of Google hardware at my home that I love. But something happened last year, a year ago. All my house went offline. I have a bunch of Google Wi-Fi equipment. It all went offline. And we kind of didn't know what happened, and then we got an email. That was an email which says, sorry guys, we pushed an update to your router that reset it to factory settings. Now what? You cannot unroll it because you cannot send commands to the router. You cannot fix it with additional patch because you don't have a connection to the router. So they send an email. Guys, please go ahead and reconnect your router. It's almost like an Albanian virus. You know the Albanian virus? It's an email that says, you are infected with Albanian virus. Please go to your command line and run rm and srf and delete everything. So this is this kind of patch. You get an email with instructions what you have to do. It's hard. It's so hard that I won't even try to explain how to perform a proper continuous update to you now, because it took us a year, a tremendous effort, and we have another great way to explain you how to do software updates. I present you the Liquid Software book. Yeah. And the book's authors. So he's a French Israeli who settled down in the Holy Land. He loves science and technology and fell in love with computer coding since the age of 10. Since then, his neurons spend an enormous amount of oxygen and sugar pondering the infinite capabilities of software. He is today helping all his fellow colleagues deliver their creation to the world faster than ever. As a chief architect of JFrog, please welcome my co-author, Fred Simon. And also, he is fascinated with making computer do what he wants him to do, ever since he laid his hands on the rubber keyboard of ZX Spectrum machine as a kid. That gives away his age, but we won't speak about it. Since then, he has discovered that computers took over his life no less than he did take control over them. While he's not busy with making computers and people live in harmony, he's acting as the CTO of JFrog. Please welcome my co-author, Yoav Landman. This side.
Yes, sure.
Well, and you know this guy, the hat and everything. Let's skip to the fun part. Well, yeah, the Liquid Software book, and I would like to take the remaining time between now and lunch to ask you guys some questions about the book. And first of all, the obvious question is, what's up with the name? What is this Liquid Software thing?
Yeah, well, the name came actually from internal discussion at JFrog about more than 2 years ago. And we started to look at what we are doing and the packages that we were managing. The packages were getting smaller and smaller. Companies were cutting their software into a smaller modular system. And they were delivering more and more version and more features faster and faster. And so instead of thinking about software delivery and software storing, which we are doing at JFrog, in terms of packages, we started to think about it in terms of Liquid, because basically the natural progression from smaller and smaller pieces, faster and faster flow, the concept of Liquid and the concept of Liquid software. And from there on, the analogy stuck. And actually, so the book is Liquid software and continuous update. And for example, the concept of continuous update, drinking liquid software kind of made sense, and we really like it.
We cannot unsee the picture of update drinking software. Right. Now, I remember myself when I first heard it from you, this concept of Liquid software 2 years ago, and the penny dropped because we break the software to pieces so small, and we push the update so frequently, it looks like a stream of Liquid. Well, next question would be, OK, so you have this concept of Liquid software, but why it is important to think about software in that way?
So we are all driven by this huge flow and huge pipeline that drives our software updates, and we have this all DevOps to drive this pipeline. But then we are, when we think about software, we still think about it in old versions, right? So I have just here the, oh, good sound. So this is the original Artifactory 2.0 box. So it's protected by a laser, and don't try to touch the glass.
Yeah. Well, the glass took the hit, so the box won.
Yeah, so the funny story about it, there was never a physical version of Artifactory, right? So, but still the designer, he felt obliged to come up with something tangible that he could bring us, because he couldn't think about software as something that has no version, even as somebody who's not doing software. And we are still bound by these concepts till today. And we really have to fight this version idea. We are having this huge pipeline, and then we are stuck with releases that are all around version names. So this is something that we are challenging as part of this book.
Yeah, yeah, and about the fight of comparing software to packages or software to Liquid. And in our product and at JFrog, it really helped to start to think about software delivery and software distribution in terms of pipe and in terms of connections between the different teams, between the dev and the prod and the staging. And so instead of thinking about putting boxes in trucks and having trucks driving around, to connect the different pieces and have this continuous flow of version all the way to production.
The term package is wrong, right? We need to fight the package as well. Right. So you talk about pipes, you talk about Liquid, you talk about this analogy, and I have to ask you, pipelines are with us for, what, 15 years? Since the invention of CI, pipeline has been a concept that we constantly use, paramount concept of Jenkins, for example. So how the pipes of Liquid software are different from pipes of continuous integration, continuous delivery?
Yeah, so when it's true that the pipeline and continuous integration, taking the code and doing this continuous build, started the Liquid software revolution. Continuous integration started the Liquid software integration. But with continuous delivery and continuous deployment, what we are seeing today is still in a lot of staging environment and in a lot of pre-prod and we're seeing a real full new deployment. So a clean slate to make sure that the tests are working perfectly and the environment. A lot of developers today, they are running it on a clean environment and on a clean data. So basically, this is not the real world. When it goes to production, you always have a lot of data and you have a lot of user information, and you need to do it with the zero downtime and with the continuous. So the actual problem of updating and continuously updating a version is what we should concentrate about, because deploying a new services or a new application is something we do once, but updating it is something we do millions of times after. So the goal is to do continuous updates, and the goal is to concentrate on how we can update faster a running application with running data and take this problem on right from the beginning.
That's definitely not how we build the CI pipelines now. Do you say that we need to rethink our approach to immutability? Is it suddenly a bad thing?
Well, no, I know it may sound confusing, but immutable infrastructure is not something that we are fighting, but it's more of a conceptual thing. Think about, for example, when you update a Docker image, right? So you always have the base layer, and then your updates are differential. So in a way, you have states there, but still many users, for example, they prefer to completely clean up their Docker internal caches because they don't trust it. So it's a lot of it is conceptual, and it's a matter of trusting your infrastructure to allow you to achieve immutability, but an optimized one, right?
Yeah, so what you say is that we need to distinguish between immutability as a good thing and stateless, which we don't really have in the real world. This is all very nice. Liquid software, continuous update, that's a great story. But it sounds like an utopia to me. What is our validation? How do we know that it can be achieved in the real world?
Right, so the validation, I think, is the business need. I mean, everyone knows that software has direct contribution to the ROI of the company. It's no longer something that is questionable. Everyone is doing software. Everyone is believing that software has real value to the organization and to what products the organization make, regardless of what they are. And the need to update software, so also Google mentioned it in their talk, they need to have auto updates. They need to not to think about software updates or to release something in a matter of even hours. So today, for example, at least in the consumer space, when you do have auto update, the expectations is to get updates in a matter of hours, sometimes even in a matter of minutes. If you can just roll back to an older release, it can take even minutes. And that puts a lot of burden on the software vendor.
So we see the demand.
Sure.
Yeah, and like we saw it with Google. They really saw Google, Netflix, Yahoo when we worked with Yahoo at the time. I mean, all the big software vendors today, and especially on the cloud, they are doing continuous update and they are managing. But they use some proprietary things that are specific to their environment. They are opening it. So Melody talked about Bazel, Spinnaker, Kubernetes, and of course
and
all
Netflix OSS
and
platform.
Netflix OSS platform. So we are starting to see the benefits of the work, and we are starting to use a lot of automation around it. But the goal is that for any software running on any platform, on any runtime, and all the way to the devices and to the end users, we need to have this thinking of continuous updates for any running piece of software. So this needs some kind of a thinking and the next change in the DevOps process.
But we already have shoulders of giants to stand on. The shoulders are there. All we need to do is climb. Yoav, you mentioned fighting the version. That's fascinating concept. What does it mean?
Well, like I said before, we are still bound by version concepts. And this version, they are there for a reason, right? Because they are checkpoints for having trust and for also bundling certain features together. And we make a big fuss around versions, and we have this huge release announcement and so on. So there is still a place for versions, but for the most part, when we develop, we don't ever think about version. In the Artifactory code base, in many other products that or even libraries that are done in JFrog, we don't really embed any version except for maybe a major version into the pipeline until we have to cut the version.
Yeah. So you say major versions are important as checkpoints, because look at us. We build a whole conference about the version. Like, just shh, don't tell anyone. Spoiler alert, Artifactory 6 tomorrow, in tomorrow's keynote. We have a major version. We have a conference around major version.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe in 3-4 years, when we will speak, we will not speak about Artifactory 12, OK? But still, there is a big importance to a version, which is, a lot of it is a commercial version, right? We cannot hide around the bush. It's a revenue stream. It still has a point. But like you don't think about what version of Chrome you're running, so it's something that's happening.
But on the other side, we see that, so for example, a couple of months ago, there were all the debate about Java release cadence. If you remember, going from a year and a half, 18 months, they are now to 6 months. And a lot of vendors that obviously rely on Java mentioned that they are not ready to upgrade and to accept a version every 6 months.
Sure. So again, it all depends, right? So when you're doing software that you don't control the update cycle, so you're leaving it up to your users to control whether they can update, and it's not a forced update, which is it's a big question, and we talk a lot about it in the book. Then you cannot, there is a difference between being able to release fast and actually like having the capacity and actually being able to force it on your users, right? Because they always feel, I just updated 2 weeks ago, the update is a whole ceremony, we are now already out of date. So you also don't want to release, but it's also creating a lot of risk in how you create releases if you wait too much.
So here's another challenge. But aren't we getting better with versions? Stuff like Semver, for example. It's been around for years now, but still, it's kind of how you improve the versioning now, how you get rid of it.
Yeah, so there is a big difference between libraries and when you have an API, where the version has still a very significant role, and something that doesn't have an API and you just install it and run it, or like a service or a consumer application.
Yeah, and by the way, all this issue of forcing the update, when we thought about it in the book, we tried to push ourselves, and we thought, when will be the time that a pilot in an airplane on flight will update his navigation system?
Driving car is another great example.
Yeah, or driving the car and updating while the car is driving, and all this kind of problematic. And we said, okay, no, that will never happen. But at the end of the day, when we think about it, we should be able to do it. Okay, we as human beings manage to update a robot on the surface of a planet, which is
nice. Which
is on another planet, and so we should be able to do those updates and to do those continuous updates. And so it starts with the web, but we should be able to update an airplane while on flight.
Yeah, I think in the book we have this diagram, kind of a decision-making matrix on where continuous update can be applied and where even today we should stay away, for example, updating planes mid-flight. Yeah, so what was the hardest concept to explain?
So, yeah, a lot of the process of writing this book, okay, was quite fun.
Fun is a nice way to put it. It was a nightmare.
So I don't know how many of you wrote a book, but it's quite a painful. And during this process, we had a really nice discussion with Kit Merker.
And by the way, he's the main editor of this book. Thank you, Kit.
And during the talk, we tried to represent what is the problematic of having a huge microservices application with a lot of services talking to each other, and how you can update so forward and backward dependencies for the one calling you and for the one that you are calling, and how can you move forward and how can you move and keep updating all those services continuously. And we find a list of nice rules to basically make sure that you keep zero downtime, so all the requests, even under load, the system keep answering always continuously, and you keep having the ability to move forward and backward. And it looked like a nice little dance, and so we called it the release shuffle. So it's a kind of a dance between all the services and holding.
The Harlem Shuffle for engineers.
Yeah, probably. And when we wrote those rules and when we designed this release shuffle, we find out basically that data is hard.
Data is hard, like not liquid, or hard, like not easy?
Yeah, data is written in stone. Okay, that's
not liquid.
Yeah, no. So data is hard. It's hard to update, and updating the data layer and updating the different schema and the documents of your different database is a hard process, especially when you have multiple services connected to it. But yeah, we find a really nice way to think about all those different problems, taking some example, and finding the good way to move forward and do this job correctly. And we hope that you're going to like it.
This is cool, and I guess you all, I hope you all read this book by now, and I would love to ask the last question is, so we have this concept, we know where we are going, we have a lot of practical advices of how to do it, but the question is, what's next? What's the next frontier?
Right, so this book is written with a very visionary concept in mind, right? But still, it has a lot of practical advices on how to actually do things, because as JFrog, we are actually dealing with tougher problems than many of the big, large-scale organizations are dealing with, just for the reason that we have multiple versions. So the large ones, they only have one or two versions, or maybe three if they use Canary releases. But when you are not in control over your runtime, which is coming back big time with IoT, the whole update mechanisms become a lot more challenging because users can move between versions really quickly. So like I said, we wrote it with a visionary but practical mind. And as part of it, and actually during the writing process, we identified 4 main areas that are challenging for us and for customers. So first one is what we call overcoming physics. So there is the real world. You still have to take a binary, and binaries are getting larger, and you have to move them from point A to point B in a very efficient way.
Isn't the internet always available and very, very fast?
Exactly. The other thing is scalability. You want to do it on a large scale with many, many endpoints and many, many devices and many production sites. Then there is the question of trust, which John Willie spoke about a lot. So you want to make sure that your software is clean and that nobody tampered with it when it reaches your runtime. And the last one, the 4th point, is the question of visibility. Making sure that you're in charge and that you're in control over the whole process. So I think you will hear a lot more about this tomorrow, and you will be able to correlate and connect the dots in some of the announcements we will make during tomorrow's keynote and part of the sessions tomorrow. So that's what's next.
Yeah, just one point about putting down all those concepts and all those information into a book. It was a lot of discussion, internal discussion at JFrog, and basically without Shlomi pushing us and and making sure that we write down, it will never exist in this hardware form that still exists, which is called the book. Thank you.
Okay, so I would really love to take some questions from the audience, but we run out of time. So maybe just one. This handsome gentleman. Yeah, you go ahead.
So Baruch, can you hear me?
Just talk louder.
So Baruch, this is really cool. There's only one problem. All the bookstores in the area are already out of stock. So how can we get our hands on this blockbuster?
don't you worry, my dear friend. It was like it's almost was staged, right? Right? So don't you worry. Don't you worry. I'll do opera now. You get a book. You get a book. You get. All of you is going to get a book. So during lunch, which is right now, all three of us, instead of eating with you, are going to sit in the book signing table by the JFrog booth. And you will come there, you will give your small book sticker that you all have on your badge, and you will get a signed copy of Liquid software. With that, don't move yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And before you leave, someone has to do the where is the restrooms talk. Yeah, you know where the restrooms are? You can go. Okay. So a couple of holding items that no one bothered to give, so I will. First of all, Wi-Fi. You probably figured it out by now. There is like a tiny kind of paper in the middle of your table. This is where the Wi-Fi password is. Coffee breaks are in this sponsor expo area, the other building. You should go there to drink coffee and to visit our awesome sponsors. Thank you, our sponsors. swampUP wouldn't exist without you. Book signing by the JFrog booth, as I mentioned. Check out the demos over there. A couple of words about the content. Being the chair of content committee, I cannot skip this part. Speakers, please stand up. Come on, come on. You're 40 here. Okay, or maybe not. Thank you very much. Those people are amazing. And right after lunch, we go to breakout sessions. 4 tracks today, 4 tracks tomorrow. Cloud native, mostly Kubernetes, obviously. Enterprise-grade DevOps tools, mostly JFrog tools, but not only. Future of DevOps. That's kind of a different kind of conference, but we still insisted to put at least some of a visionary and thought leadership talks. Check those out, they're great. Keynotes tomorrow, obviously. Metadata, we have a soft spot for metadata in JFrog, so a lot of talks about data and metadata as well. DevSecOps, John Willis gave us a perfect start. We'll have talks about that as well. IoT, obviously, robots, bots, chatbots, physical, virtual, a lot of this stuff as well. And last but not least, Conan. Shlomi mentioned Conan in his opening remarks. Today we are going to have an hour-and-a-half roadmap discussion with the founders of Conan, Diego and Luis. They're here. Tomorrow we have a dedicated track, Conan stuff all day long. If you are into C++, native Conan, please do not miss. So, as you saw, the speakers are awesome, the content is awesome. If everything's good, it's thanks to them. If something didn't, it's my fault, and I want to hear about it. So in all the talks, you will have feedback forms lying on the table in the breakout sessions. Please fill them, and we will collect them, and we will know how to improve. After the breakout, we have the fun part. I don't know what's more fun, sessions or this, but that's the official fun part. A Wine Cave reception sponsored by Circle CI in a wine cave. No need to say more. Gala dinner back here with a mind-blowing DevOps mentalist, Lior Suchard. I have no idea what I just said. This is what's written. We'll see. I will be surprised for sure. Crash Bar Party sponsored by Sumo Logic all the way to the night. Do not drink too much because tomorrow, 10 before 9, we are getting back here for tomorrow's keynotes, and they will be amazing. If you have any problem, if you need any help, if something doesn't work, you see something, say something, find people with team on the back, and let us know. And with that, lunch, book signing, sessions. Thank you very much.